What's up, potatoes? And today we're gonna settle an age-old question. Well, maybe not age-old, for like however long as the game's been out. But which is better? Should you use a mouse and keyboard or should you use a controller? I'm gonna start with some pros and cons of each, and then do a direct comparison, and then I'll give you my opinion on what you should use for For Honor. I'm gonna put timestamps in the description so you can skip to the part of the video that you want to get to, and I also did some direct comparisons where I'll play the same opponent with a controller, and then I'll play them again with mouse and keyboard. So I basically just sacrificed my kill death ratio for you, and now everyone who talks shit to me in For Honor has some more ammo on me. One thing to note though is that in the closed beta I used a mouse and keyboard, but past that I've been using a controller, so I'm going to try to keep this as unbiased as possible. Let's start with the pros for the controller first. Blocking is a lot easier on a controller. I mean, the joystick is intuitive, you just move it in the direction and it happens. You can mess with the dead zones, but I mean, mouse sensitivity or anything like that is not going to affect a controller. You know exactly how much you need to move the joystick to block, and there are no questions about which way you're going to block. Unless you move the joystick right, you're not going to block right. Unless you move the joystick left, you're not going to block left. This is actually a problem that I encountered with the mouse, and I play at a low DPI. The guard would switch with the tiniest of movements. And sometimes when your knees are weak and your palms are sweaty, you might twitch and move the mouse. And in a game like For Honor, you can't do that, especially at a DPI of like 600. Another pro is that controllers are comfortable. Now this might just be personal preference, but a mouse and keyboard can get kind of uncomfortable. I'm talking about like wrist position and like how big your mouse mat is, and if your keyboard rests on your mouse mat. There's just a lot of logistics involved. Where I take my PS4 controller and I plug it in through USB and I'm ready to go. I can hold it down near my lap, I can rest it on my desk. It's just intuitive with fighting games. However, that leads us into our cons. When buying a PC, getting a lot of peripherals is already pretty expensive. Like with peripherals, I'm talking about keyboard, mouse, headset, monitors. Honestly, the list can just go on and on. So if you don't already own a console, buying a controller can be pretty expensive, especially because just recently Steam and Uplay added native controller support. Another con for the controller is going to be customization. Now, don't get me wrong, the default controls work, and like I said, they're intuitive. But if you're like me and you're used to PC gaming, you want the game to play exactly how you want it. So not being able to change your controls to fit how you want to play is kind of annoying. Now let's go over the pros for mouse and keyboard. To build on my last point about customization, mouse and keyboard is awesome for that. You can change literally everything. You know, if you want your execution to be enter, go for it. You can also bind extra mouse buttons to be like feint and guard break, which is what I have, which increases your reaction time by quite a bit. This last point is also kind of a con, because if you don't have a mouse with extra mouse buttons, it's just not worth it. The travel time will be the same switching from the keys on a keyboard to the buttons on a controller. Right now it works really well because my mouse buttons are right where my thumb is, but if I had to move my hand to get to these buttons, I mean, it really just wouldn't be worth it. Another pro of mouse and keyboard is that it has a higher skill cap. Basically, you can remap everything exactly how you like it, and you're probably going to map everything to reduce reaction time to the lowest possible you can get it to. Eventually it becomes second nature and you can customize it however you want, especially if you have mouse buttons. I feel like in competitive play this is going to be huge. For the cons for the mouse and keyboard, I've talked about this point a little bit already. The mouse can be a little bit jumpy and you can miss blocks because of it. Now this is coming from someone who has a gaming mouse and plays first-person shooters. Like, my settings are made to get headshots. So with the jitteriness and all that jumping around going on, you can see why I'm a little bit hesitant to use it. And personally, I found it harder to get parries off with the mouse and keyboard. Also, for some reason, especially playing as Berserker, dodges are a little bit unresponsive on mouse and keyboard. It just feels a little bit more intuitive on controller. Anyways, I thought if I was going to make this video, I needed to play on the mouse and keyboard quite a bit to see how it was. I went into 2v2 duels armed with my mouse and keyboard to see what I could do. Let's just say it was pretty rocky to start off. I was getting slapped left, right, and center. But once I got the hang of it, my timing was so much better. My feints were on point, my counter guard break timing was near perfect, and I was performing almost as good as I was on controller. And this is with like 2 matches under my belt. You can attribute some of that to game knowledge and just knowing what to expect when you play against people, but being able to pick it up that quick was very reassuring. The pros for a controller still apply here, but being able to pick it up and perform at the level that I was performing at is promising. Animation cancelling as a Berserker is still a bit tough on mouse and keyboard, but it's possible, and really it's just going to take a little bit more practice. So what do I think you should use to play For Honor? Well, It mostly boils down to personal preference. I'm sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear. For the average player, it's not really gonna matter. The average player is gonna use controller. It's easier to use, it's easier to pick up, and it's intuitive. You won't really have to mess around with settings, you literally just plug and play. And for like 75% to 80% of the player base, that's going to be enough. And most people are just going to play what they're familiar with, which is what you should do. But if you're trying to get godlike, I think keyboard and mouse is where you're going to need to go. If this game develops a competitive scene, keyboard and mouse is going to be the go-to thing. The customization is unrivaled and the reaction time increase is huge. And when I say all that, like I said, to the average player it's not going to matter. But at high level play, that reaction time increase is huge. Let me know what you use in the comments below and what system you're on. I kind of want to see what the community uses. I was asking a bunch of people in my 4v4 elimination games and my duels and stuff what they use, and the vote was kind of split. And people basically boiled it down to personal preference, which is what I thought anyways. I apologize in advance to all you PC Master Race people for using a controller on a PC.
You crazy mother...